everyone. We are going live tonight with Because We're Strong, and I believe it's our 7th episode, I think. And it's going to be with Christopher. He is an adult with Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome, and I think he's in his 30s. We'll have to ask him when he comes on here. But, he's had countless amounts of surgery. He's really been through it. I can't wait to hear his story because I think all of us, especially us newer parents, are really going to learn a lot from him. So I'm super excited. There was a lot of people that really, really wanted to hear his story because BWS really isn't that known or old, and he was pretty, as rare as considered. He was rare when he was born. So I'm excited to hear his story. So tell everyone who you are. Everyone is super excited to talk to you and just hear your story because you've been around longer and dealing with it longer. So you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, dealing with it longer just makes me sound old, I think, or it makes me feel
you're not
old.
that old.
But that's right. So my name's Christopher, and I've dealt with, sounds a little more harshly, but had Wiedemann, however you want to say it, since the beginning. So on one hand, it's been a lot. On the other hand, I have to say that of all the things to be born with and to have to deal with, I've been blessed in one sense of talking about it. I almost never give it a second thought. It's not like something that has sidelined me really for anything in a lot of regards. Um, on the other hand, if I introduce myself to someone and tell them my life story, um, a lot of times I forget to tell them about BWS because um, I think some of it is, it has been a lot, but it's something that we just my parents always did really well at not letting it become an issue for me. Um, but on the other hand, there wasn't a lot of information about it. So one of the weird things is we were always told from the start that it was one of the few syndromes that you grow out of. So we always approached it as, uh, get through it for now. And when you become an adult, it's not going to be an issue anymore. Now we see that that's not necessarily the case. But I think maybe that kind of helped the mentality of just dealing with it and processing it and living with it. And so I think in some areas, the lack of information was a blessing in disguise. You know, um, I think I can say that. Maybe for my mom, that's not necessarily the case. Information would have been helpful for her, I'm sure. Um, so, so yeah, it's just been something we've taken a day at a time. I was also blessed with really good doctors. Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. Back then it was Scottish Rite. Um, some of the best doctors and nurses that have ever worked with children.
That's great.
I've had that luxury, so that also made it very very easy to deal with. So uh, in a lot of ways, I've been blessed.
That's
so
awesome.
I wouldn't trade it. So uh, so yeah, just a lot of surgeries. So it's messed me up. I had I had mom in my corner to send me some notes, and well, they're on my phone, which I'm having to use now because my iPad and computer wouldn't
She
work.
should
So
text them over here. Text them and we'll tell you what they are.
yeah, I'm gonna see if I can pull them up on my iPad also.
People want to know, are you really
since
6'9"?
nothing. Yes, I am 6 foot
Oh
nine.
my goodness.
Um, so I guess born, which mom will have to pipe in. I think so the joke has kind of always been the odd thing is I was born. I was premature, and so um, I guess I wasn't big for birth
Hmm.
age and or size rather. About 6 pounds and 9 ounces. So at birth I was
Yeah.
6'9" weight, and then now I'm 6'9" in height. So it's always been kind of one of those little
You're
funny
keeping the trend.
anecdotes of right, right. So growth spurts um, my whole life from the start. I've always been the tallest, um, and I would say growing pains were an issue off and on. And by sixth grade, I was
Oh
six
my
foot,
gosh.
and so um, one summer, I think probably my biggest summer was mom. You'll have to chime in. I think somewhere 4 to 6 inches
Oh
in a
my
summer,
God.
something like that. Um, so I've always worn high water jeans, uh, and always had shirts that were a little
Yeah.
too short, but yeah, it happens. So yeah, so 6'9", which again, the lack of information in the beginning was that was odd. So now they say that that may not necessarily be the case. We were always told that kids with BWS were very, very thick and very
Hmm.
husky, and not necessarily tall. So it seemed to be one of those things that just was abnormal about having the syndrome. And so now maybe that's not the case. Maybe it's a little mixture of both. I do have some distant relatives that were tall. A great grandmother that was a great 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 grandmother that was a European model at 6 foot.
Okay.
I have a couple of cousins that are taller than I am. I think they're around 7 foot, um, but they're not people that I see, have a lot of contact with. So they're a little bit down the line. So maybe it's a little mixture
Right.
of both. Um,
I
so
know. I always wonder if
so yeah, that
if
played.
Owen's going to be super tall because he was almost 2 foot. He was almost 24 inches when he was born. So I'm like, is he going to be like insanely tall or?
Wow, yeah, that would be it'd be interesting to see how many start to
Yeah.
become taller and how much the syndrome plays an effect on that.
Exactly.
Um, so I know a lot of people have usually have questions as far as infants and newborns and the signs and those types of things. So I've got my notes from good old mom. Um, I'm going to butcher some of this, but you'll just have to bear with me. So at the time of birth, not to get too much into the details, but basically from birth and until I don't know, mom, you'll have to chime in with the age. For a lot of the beginning, my mom was a single mom. She dealt with a lot of this on her own. She was in California. She's a military veteran. She was in the Air
Good for
Force.
her.
Yeah, so a little shout out to both my mom and my pop were in Desert Storm, and so at that time I was born on a military base. Um, that also tied into the lack of information around BWS. So I was born in January 9th, 84, and was pretty much diagnosed at that point. I think I was there. I think she got to hold me for a matter of minutes. Um, and then I was wrapped up and taken to UCLA
Okay.
Medical Center, um, where I spent. Let me check my notes.
That's
I'm
okay.
sorry. Um, I know I had several surgeries right off the
Oh.
bat. Unfollicle, appendectomy. So the appendectomy actually, my appendix was on the wrong side. So I don't know how much BWS plays into
Right.
that, but they were concerned with everything else within the syndrome, that if I had issues and I went to the ER complaining,
Right.
um, they wouldn't get it out in time, and it would be fatal. Um, I had a heart cath put in. I know somewhere in there. Uh, Mine just went blank. I'm sorry. I had to be fed through a tube. I had to go through the armpit to feed me. I know the tongue played into that. Double hernia. Of course, I had the creases behind the ears. Um, the angel kiss, or the birthmark in between the eyes, and then of course the enlarged
Right.
tongue. That was from the start. My first tongue reduction was at 1 year old.
Okay.
Um, my second one um, was was way later. I would say teenager
Wow.
years. Um, so um, my mom would be able to give some of the parents a little different insight um, to that end. Um, the second surgery didn't go as well for me, um, of having it
Yeah.
done. She was concerned with whether or not I would grow into the tongue, because there was a lot of times where I would have a growth
Hmm.
spurt and my tongue would be very normal. And then it was like my tongue would catch up or pass me, and it would be a little bit of a problem. I think I saw someone ask a few days ago about having like a high roof in their
Hmm.
mouth. Um, uh, so I have that because of the tongue, high arched roof. So I don't know. I think I'd have to ask her. I think she may would have waited to do the second
Hmm.
one for a little longer, to where I may would have passed, um, because on the second one they didn't cut it uh, correctly.
Oh.
So they actually took too much off. Um, they took too much length and not enough um, fat, if you
Wow.
will. Um, so uh, as far as that goes, I probably would have held off. But it is what it is.
Why did they say that you should have the second one?
Because it was still rather
Was it
large.
affecting your teeth?
Um, yes, yeah, I would say that now. Um, and to be honest with you, I can't really remember. Um, it's hard to remember how bad my teeth may have been at the
Right.
time. So I wouldn't say that it was detrimental to my teeth, but it did play a
Yeah.
role.
Because Owen's
Um,
teeth are already, his first tongue reduction was at 7 weeks, and his tongue has grown since, and his teeth are like pushing forward, his bottom teeth.
mm, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I guess as far as that goes, and I know I'm kind of jumping around here a
That's
little
okay.
bit, but what kind of plays a part in that is later in life, when I was 18, I had reconstructive surgery on my face.
Whoa.
The reason they did that was because of um, what we assumed to be the growth spurts. Um, I had a very very flat looking face, and they weren't sure that the growth spurts would keep up with that, and so they were afraid that I would have like a crescent moon looking face, deeper in the center, and protruding around the forehead and the chin. So what they did was they broke both top and bottom
Oh,
jaw, uh, moved the bottom jaw back, top jaw forward, wired my mouth shut. At that point is when they did the no, I'm sorry. So I'd already had the second tongue reduction. At this point, because they had taken too much off, I forget the name. Mom always corrects it, but the piece underneath your
oh
tongue that
yes.
kind of latches
Mm-hmm.
it down. So they cut that when they did the plastic surgery.
Wow.
Um, and then they took a rib, and the plan was to cut the rib in half and use half on both sides and build out my
Oh.
cheekbones. And then I had really small sinus cavities, so they opened up. They basically like drilled open the sinus cavities, um, which I'll come back to that. But they asked me what side did I want the rib taken from. I chose my right side um, because I've always felt, as odd as it seems, that my right side's my stronger
Mm-hmm.
side, right? Even though I'm left-handed, but I pitch right-handed. So I'm ambidextrous. I can write left or right. Um, and depending on the sport, I swap hands.
That's cool.
But right is always my go-to. Yeah, sometimes it's a pain. Um, but what they didn't know prior to that, to being 18, um, was that bones and organs on the right side are larger than the left. We never knew that. So, of course, we're several hours into a pretty long surgery. He pulls the bone out to put it in my cheeks and it won't fit because
Oh my God.
the bones are too big. So he had to improvise and quarter them.
Oh my gosh.
So instead of using a half, I have a quarter rib for cheekbones. And then they had to, of course, sew everything back up and send me on
So
my
you
way.
have
So
your ribs
uh,
in your cheeks.
yeah.
Wow.
So these are rib bones.
You would never
Yeah.
even know.
That was Yeah, so that was probably the most severe surgery of all of them. They went in front of my teeth, um, cut cut my lip, and basically pulled my face away
Oh.
to put the bones in. Um, so yeah, that was
How
that was a
long did
tough one,
that take
and
to
that was done
recover
at.
from?
I think I'm still
Oh,
recovering from it. I would say a few
wow.
months because my mouth was wired shut
Oh,
completely. So it was a lot of Go-Gurt and
oh
apple
my
juice.
God.
That's all I could get down.
Jeez.
So it was rough. Um, and then while recovering from that, uh, I got two kidney
Oh my
stones.
God.
Uh, yeah, so I had to go back to the emergency room for kidney
Oh
stones
my God.
uh, during that whole process. So yeah, it was brutal. It was brutal. It was not fun. Um, so uh, I'm trying to remember. I was going to go back to some. Oh, and so the screws they used, probably a year or two later, the screws started backing themselves out. So I had to go back in and have the screws
Oh
removed.
my goodness.
Um, yeah, it was rough. Um, on one hand, I'm glad I did it. On the other hand, if you were to ask me now, would I do it again? I'd have to say
Really?
no, only because I know what it felt like to go
Yeah.
through it, and that was a hard pill to
Yeah.
swallow. So, um, what else? Double hernia at birth. Um, what else?
So did your
Sorry, I'm trying to go through. There's a lot of
That's okay.
notes.
Did your mom know about your phallocele before you were born? Like, did they see it in ultrasound or no?
I don't think
Wow.
so. Um, but I'm not 100%
I'm
on
sure
that.
she'll answer it. I'm sure she'll
So
type it. She's done pretty good at answering
yeah,
some of
she
the
will.
stuff.
Yeah, she fixing
Yeah, she's doing good.
all my mess ups.
She said no. She said
Good.
no.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I think it was all kind of thrown on her
Oh my
all at
God.
once, which is kind of, when you, um, like, I don't even know that they necessarily told her about. They put me on a helicopter and shot me off to UCLA, and I think she pretty much found out like as it
Oh my
happened.
goodness.
Um, so it's a
Yeah.
lot for a mom, I'm sure.
I can't even imagine.
So yeah, so I was there for quite a while. Again, she'll have to tell you the exact time. So I went back. It was literally one day before my first birthday. So January 8th of 85, I was back at UCLA for the first tongue reduction. Um, she did tell me later too, or today on the phone. Um, for several months, I did do the kidney scans, um, which I think has pretty much become standard. Um, there was one other. Sorry, Mom, I'm letting you down. You're gonna have to fill me in here. There was one other thing I think she said that I went for annual checkups on. I think, um,
Did you
but
ever
yeah.
have any scares?
So that was the only thing that I didn't
You
have.
didn't have any.
Nope, that's the only thing I
Wow.
didn't
Well, I
have.
mean, geez, I think
I
you should
had,
get a break.
yeah, yeah. So I had all the other symptoms except for the Wells tumors. That was the only thing that never presented.
Wow.
So I was definitely blessed in that regard. But instead of having, I guess, the tumors, I just got kidney stones
I heard
instead.
they're really bad.
So
I heard they're worse than labor.
I would say they are, but I've never given
Yeah.
birth, so I don't know. But they are awful. I've had anywhere from 8 to 10, maybe a
Oh,
dozen by now. I can't remember exactly how many. You just kind of lose count eventually, but um, and my kidney stones are a result of over functioning
okay.
kidneys, and so they can come from a litany of things, whether it's calcium or if you have too much dairy in your diet, etc. Mine comes from just being highly
Right.
active. So to combat that, I just have to stay
Yeah.
hydrated. I have to keep a drink with me
Okay.
constantly. Um, so I don't. Uh, One of the disadvantages I have is that because there doesn't seem to be a lot of um, patients, if you will, my
Hmm.
age, that the questions I would have now, I don't have answers to because there's really nobody to
Yeah,
ask.
you
Or
were like the
most,
I don't know what to call it. You were like the try me out kind of.
yeah, in a lot of ways, that's what it feels. I did come across an article that broke down the age brackets and the years, and I was lucky in the regard that I got diagnosed with it. There was probably plenty that have it, and to this day they've just never been diagnosed with it, so they
Right.
don't know.
Right.
Um, and if you think about probably my last related surgery was in my before my 20s, you know. So you've got adults who've gone the last 20, 30 years and they haven't had to they've had to deal with
Right.
it. So there's no reason to ask, hey, what's going on with this? So yeah, there's not a lot of people to ask. So, and then most of the research groups are focused on the babies and the infants, and so I don't know if the high functioning kidneys um, is an attribute. Um, I
Yeah,
don't
that's
know.
interesting.
I know that the organs on my right side are larger, so liver, spleen, kidney, um, all of that's larger on one
Were
side than
your
the other.
arms and legs on that side
Um,
longer? Like, did you have any hypertrophy at all?
um, so no, um, but um, not enough to be seen, but enough to be
Okay.
noticed,
Yeah,
if that
yeah, yeah.
makes sense. Um, actually, the best way that I show people is that, like, if you see my
Hmm.
watch, like it's got a good snug fit, it doesn't move. Um, it pops on easy enough. If I swap to my right side, so I wear it at a certain place on my wrist, so it's that way on both sides. I can't even close
Huh.
it.
Wow.
If I was to push it, I mean, you can see it
Yeah,
like
you
pinching
get
the
your feet in
skin.
there.
Like it won't. Yeah, it's as far as it'll go. So it's definitely noticeable,
Right.
um, but not so like you wouldn't look at me and see it.
Right.
So one arm's not necessarily longer, but diameter
There's more
wise,
to it.
legs, arms, right. So it definitely plays a part. So
Wow.
um, and really, as far as I know, again, Mom, you'll have to chime in. Um, I don't ever remember that being discussed as a kid going to doctors. So that's kind of been a new development, I think, over the years,
Wow.
or at least a symptom that I didn't have, and so it never came
Right.
up. So, but that's been interesting to
Yeah.
learn.
Do you know what type of
So
BWS
yeah,
you have?
I don't,
Interesting.
I don't, which is another thing that variations or degrees of BWS is something that I just recently learned and come aware of just becoming involved in the groups here
Wow.
recently. Um, Again, we were always told that it's something that we'd grow
Right.
out of. And so I guess the mindset was, you hit 20, 25 and forget about it. You just go on with life. It's something that you used to deal with and you don't have to deal with it
Right.
anymore. Um, so truthfully, probably all of my 20s, I never gave it a second thought. And then into my 30s, um, you get older and you mature somewhat. I'm gonna play fast and loose with that word, but uh, you just start thinking like, if other people are dealing with this, I wonder if I could help them. And so I just started slowly looking into it, and
So cool.
I would say in the last probably year to 2 years, it's been something more. It's become more of a focus,
Awesome.
and so which I'm glad because I've learned a lot more about it uh, than I really thought I would.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been
So
interesting.
did you ever have
So
to do the like any leg lengthening surgeries or any surgeries on your legs or anything like that?
no, I never had to do that. I did have knee surgery. Um, my first knee surgery was third
Oh my
grade.
god.
Had a floating kneecap, which caused a lot of pain, a lot of trouble. Um, so basically, I would walk. The kneecap would come out of
Oh,
socket. It would basically become lodged. My knee or leg wouldn't bend or straighten, excuse me, and cause me to fall. And then it would just be extremely painful. I dealt with that for
wow.
years, to the point that I think a lot of my parents, teachers, they just thought, tall kid, he's just
Right.
clumsy. Um, and so once they discovered that was surgery number one. Um, but no lengthening. Um,
Okay.
uh, Nothing in that regard. I did have calcium buildups on both ankles
Okay.
that caused some pretty big knots. So they were bit painful. I do remember some issues with wearing shoes, um, maybe not shoes, but boots a few times. So that was another surgery. Um, yeah, it's kind of hard to keep them all straight
Yeah,
sometimes, but
wow. How
um,
was because as a mom, I think you always worry about kids because kids are mean. And I think even like just like with my 4-year-old, there's nothing, he doesn't have anything wrong with him. I don't want to say BWS is having something wrong with you, but he's a typical kid, and I worry about him being bullied. So I worry even more so with Owen. So how was your experience with that? Because you obviously had a larger tongue, you obviously were bigger. How was that for you?
uh, you know, as far as the, and I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to plug my phone in, so I'm gonna swap
That's
it
okay.
around here. Um, so for the most part, I think um, one to play the old card. It's a little different
That's true.
time back then. God, I hate saying back then, but um, it was a little different. I think the other thing that really played to my advantage, unfortunately, was my size. Um, so
They didn't want to mess with you.
as far as yeah, and I know that sounds a little cocky, but
That's
um,
probably true.
it wasn't. Yeah, it just yeah. I mean, by sixth grade, I was as tall as the door frame, really. I mean, so uh, it just never was a big issue. I do remember um, probably prior to that, maybe elementary. Um, I think I think bullying may be a little intense to call it,
Like teasing.
but teasing and stuff because I would be out from time to time for doctor stuff. So I would miss, several days of school for this, or third grade, I had to wear a cast most of the year on my leg for knee
Oh,
surgery. Um, and so little things like that. Um, but for the most part, um, it wasn't that big of a deal because once once I started growing into my tongue, if you will, um, unless I pointed it out, nobody really
yeah.
knew. I think I was probably harder on myself about it than students were.
Yeah.
Um, and to be truthfully honest about it, um, I always felt like my tongue made me talk a little funny. Even now, I don't always like how I sound, and I feel like my tongue has played a role in that
Hmm.
over the years. Um, but I mean, ultimately, it's not like anybody ever
Yeah.
says anything. So, um, and again, not to be complimentary without cause, but again, my parents just really did a fantastic job at uh, keeping the focus on what was
Right.
important. And so, uh, uh, luckily, I didn't really, I don't have a story there,
Well, that's good
So
though.
bullying was just, yeah, it is. Uh, but yeah, it's just not something that I had to deal much
Good.
with. No more than just some razzing and some teasing. Um, so yeah, uh, that was pretty uneventful there. Come on, mommy. I know I'm forgetting something. You'll have to tell
Do
me.
you think
Um,
how do you deal with everything that you've gone through? Like, how do you deal with all that mentally for yourself? Like, just keeping your I don't want to say mental well-being, but like just keeping yourself kind of like, okay, I went through this and I'm okay and it is what it is type of thing.
um, again, it's all the parents. they never they never let me feel sorry for myself.
Good.
Um, they never let it be a stumbling block for why I could or couldn't do something. Um, so to stop there for 2 seconds and to be completely open, um, absolutely, I had. I can remember one particular time. Um, I can't remember. So I can remember two times growing up specifically. I'm sure there were more, but these two times I remember very vividly. Um, so from the time that I was born to the time that I was probably 12, 13ish, I got pneumonia at least twice
Mm.
a year, like clockwork.
Okay.
To the point that doctors would tell my mom, "Oh, he doesn't have pneumonia, he's fine," and she would have to tell him, like, "Look, I'm telling you, it's pneumonia. He has it. Just deal with it." And so I can remember one time feeling sick as it started to happen. And it was in a particular time of year where the seasons were getting warmer. It was, everybody can go outside and play.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just the worst time for a kid to be sick. And I felt it coming. And I remember thinking, like, maybe I can push this off and it won't happen. And I can go outside and play and everything will be perfect and roses. And I got sick. And of course, pneumonia. You can't mess
No.
around. So there was no going outside. The other one, I think it was after my second tongue reduction because I want to say I don't remember if she put this in the notes. Um, if I was a teenager, it was just barely. Um, so I was still pretty young, still wanting to go outside and be around friends. And I can remember being inside recovering, um, and like a scene out of a sad movie, sitting in my
Oh.
room, watching out the window as my neighbors. I had a couple of neighbors that we grew up together. They were all outside riding bikes, playing and laughing and having a good time,
Oh.
and I was just heartbroken. So you're always going to have those moments, right? You're going to have
Yeah.
something that just bums you out. But overall, in the grand scheme of looking at life, um, my parents never let that be a focal point. So uh, not letting it get to me now or let it be something that I dwell on. Um, really, all the credit there goes to parenting and to how I was raised. And again, um, having having been told from the start that you're going to grow out of this. This isn't going to be something that you deal with. I think that played a big
Yeah.
role. So while in some ways I want to be frustrated and a little jaded that we didn't have the information that people
Right.
have now, um, in some small ways, ignorance was bliss, and so it played to our advantage in some ways. So um, you know, it's the silver lining, right? You just have to look to make the best of it. And I know that's a cliche, but cliches are a cliche
Yeah.
because there's a little bit of truth in there.
Right.
Um, so yeah, and then and now it's just most of the time if I tell somebody about the surgeries or the fact that I was born on an Air Force base in California and I was flown to UCLA, it's just a cool story for
Yeah.
them, and they just want to hear all about it. Um, so, uh, so yeah, uh, I just keep it light and very matter of
Yep.
fact, and in spite of it, here I stand, and just I don't dwell on it. So,
Awesome.
um, but a lot of it comes from the parents, I think, if not all of it.
Right. Your mom said here
Not that y'all don't have enough pressure.
your mom said here that you had a hole in your heart at birth. They said it was going to close on its own. Um, It never
Yep.
did because of your growth spurt. So you had heart issues in your 20s.
Yeah. Good save, Mom.
Good save.
Yeah. So, um, yeah. So, at 2021, um, I was in police academy and had done some pretty strenuous training and running and jumping and everything else they could make up for us to do. And at the end of it, I could not catch my breath. Um, did the whole, arms in the air, lay down on the ground, drink some water,
Right.
everything, and just could not catch my breath. Um, and so because they had to be safe, they called paramedics. Paramedics came out. Um, they said that something wasn't adding up right and that they wanted me checked out. I tried to decline it. They wouldn't have it. So the next thing I know, um, I'm in a local hospital, and a cardiac doctor, cardiologist, came in and was ready to clear me and send me out the door. And his PA um, was a big advocate that something wasn't right. Um, and so I was again blessed to be at the right place at the right time with the right medical staff, um, and in a breach of protocol, she come in one morning, listen to my heart, and instead of just keeping the thoughts to herself, she told me and my mother, who was right there in the
Yeah.
room, um, always.
Oh,
Um, that she hears something and she wasn't going to let up until the doctor heard it too.
wow.
Um, and so, being a PA, the doctor was not happy that she had opened her mouth. Um, so he said, "Fine, order whatever test you want." And sure enough, when it came back that I had a hole in my heart, he was wrong, she was right,
Wow.
and off to surgery. Off to like it was surgery. As a matter of fact, it was surgery 21 because for the first 5 years of my 20s, when I got to 20, I had 20 surgeries. When I hit 21, I had a surgery. When I hit 22, I was at 22
Oh my
surgeries.
gosh.
Um, and it went like that until about 25,
Wow.
26. And then it let up.
So you didn't have anything, you had
So,
the hole and then they fixed that. Wow.
yep. Yeah. So they patched it. It was the uh, cardio seal occluder is what
Mm-hmm.
they called it. Um, it was um, it was done under testing, so I had to sign
Wow.
waivers to get it done. They paid for it under the the medical test, the medical whatever it's called. It
Yeah.
was experiment. I hate to say it that word, but um, so they covered it, and then I think it was about 8 years later the FDA actually approved it finally, and that's the procedure that they still use now. Um, so yeah, it was an easy fix. It did put me out for a while as far as
Mm-hmm.
recovery. I would say realistically at least a year.
Wow.
It was 30 days of no exercise, no strenuous anything whatsoever. Um, Within the 90 days, I could start doing a little bit more and more. But realistically, it took me probably a year to recover fully,
Wow.
um, just because that procedure was done.
Off the
Uh,
books.
it was just done. It was done later. So had they done that surgery when I was, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 1 or 2, um, it probably wouldn't have affected me in recovery like it
Right.
did. So the fact that anytime you do anything around the heart, in the 20s to 40s, it really affects
Yeah.
recovery. Um, so that was a hard one to get over. Um, but overall, it's been, once it was fixed, it was done.
And you've never
So
had that feeling anymore.
no issue since. Nope,
Wow.
none. And have been a big advocate for fitness. So mountain biking, going to the gym. Yeah. So far at this point, no issues.
That's awesome.
Hypoglycemia is probably the only um, I'd say issue, but the only symptoms that I really face now. So I have to. Mm, it doesn't it doesn't manage my
Hmm.
day, but I do have to kind of be aware and make sure that I
Yeah.
eat, or keep some type of snacks with me just to make sure. But yeah, that would be the only. Um yeah, well, I take that back. Hypoglycemia and cardiogenic syncope.
Okay. You faint.
Excuse me. So yeah, which I believe I saw someone in here talking about uh, the syncope in connection with
Hmm.
BWS. Um, I don't I don't know to what end. Don't quote me
Okay.
on that. I just thought I saw
Yeah.
that. Um, but I think mine is more connected to my height.
Yeah.
Uh, insert tall joke here, but you know, sitting for long periods of time, laying down for long periods of time. If I jump up quickly and take off
Yeah.
running, uh, it all gets dizzy pretty
Yeah.
quickly. So large amounts of salt intake helps. Staying hydrated, which also helps with the kidneys. So um, I think those are the only two issues that really play a role daily.
That's not too
Um,
bad considering everything.
right, right. So I can't really
Yeah.
complain there. But yeah, I'm trying to.
Do you think that because there's more for us new parents, it doesn't seem like there's a lot out there, but for you, it seems like there's so much more because there was absolutely nothing. Do you think that you would get genetically tested to see what type of BWS you have, or
But
no?
yeah, yeah,
Do
for
you
sure.
think
I'm
that
sorry, I hit the wrong button over
that's
here.
okay. Because there's more.
Um, so yeah, absolutely. So the way that it's always been explained to me, and again, I know that my information could be outdated, so I'm not speaking for anyone. But to the best of my knowledge, BWS starts as a genetic
Mhm.
mutation, right? That at its root, that's what
Mhm.
it is. So I'm not a doctor, and I don't play one on TV, but symptoms aside, uh, I think you almost have to start there, right? That's going to tell you a definitive yes or no.
Right.
Um, and then I think I would use the symptoms after that to judge the severity, right? So I think everybody's pretty much seen the chart of you have to have at least two of these or one of these or you know these three symptoms uh, to qualify for BWS. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but
Yeah, for like the clinical
um,
diagnosis part, you mean? Mhm.
right. So like uh, any one or two of those in and of itself can be just a coincidence,
Mhm.
right? You can just have the crease, you can have creases behind your ears. That doesn't mean
Right.
BWS. But if you have the genetic mutation plus the creases plus the
Mhm.
enlarged tongue, but no other symptoms, then you have BWS. You just don't have it severely, and I hate to use that word severely, but um, I think that's the place that you have to start with,
Would
you
you,
know.
they could test
That
your
just
blood though. What I mean by that is like they could test your blood now that, and they could tell you what your molecular cause is. So they could tell you, um, like for example, Owen has the UPD cause. And then, so that puts him at the second highest cancer risk versus someone that has, like this, I think it's CKBN1 cause. Or, so would you be interested in finding out which kind of cause you had?
yeah, absolutely. So um, I guess I could probably call somewhere to find this out. So back when I was, uh, don't kill me, mom, maybe 14, the whole family loaded up and drove to St. Louis, and we went to a BWS study. Um, and so I want to say it was maybe a week long. I know it was quite a few days, um, where they drew blood. They put me through a few tests. Matter of fact, I have a scar on the inside of my arm where they took a plug of
Mm-hmm.
skin, like all the way down to
Cool.
the muscle. Um, so they did that. They did. I think they did a few scans. I know they took a ton of blood, 3 or 4 times. I remember giving blood, um, and it was all testing not only the patient, but they also took blood from my younger brother and
Hmm.
sister. Um, so I know that they use that to kind of, I guess, test. Um, so I'm assuming somewhere that information is there, but I just don't think at the
They
time
do.
they told us, and if they did, uh, maybe we didn't catch it. But I mean, you have to figure that was at least 12, 13 years
Yeah,
ago. So the research has come
I
a long
wonder
way.
if they didn't really have, like typing back then. I wonder. Your mom said, "Will that be part of the study in Philadelphia?" So, D, they'll talk about that in Philadelphia. They'll talk about how there's different. Um, the best way I can explain it, how I know it, is that there's different like levels of mutation at the gene, and that's what puts, yeah,
Right.
that's like what puts them, categorizes the kids with BWS in different categories and puts them at a different risk of cancer. Um, so I know, like when Owen got his blood taken and they gave it back to us, they were able to say, okay, Owen has the UPD type. This is where, so like for his type, he received um two of the on off switch genes. The mother gives the on switch, or the off switch, and the father gives the on switch to grow. And so he got two of them, and not my off switch. But then there's other ways that the gene can mutate, and so that changes their risk. So I'm sure if you got genetically, like if you did genetic blood work again, they could tell you that. Which,
Yeah, that would be interesting to. Yeah, I would definitely be up for it. I mean, at this point, the more knowledge, the better, right?
yeah,
So yeah, I would be open to it for sure. I feel like it's got to be in there, or at least with what information they have at this point, they would have to be able to tell me something
right.
more. But again, um, I want to choose my words carefully here. It seems like being an adult, especially at 35, trying to get information about BWS as it pertains to me at 35 or 45 and 50 and 60. Um, it's it's practically
Yeah,
impossible.
that's sad.
I have reached out to a lot of doctors, studies, and just asked like, hey, you know, what am I up against?
Right.
Um, so like I said, the first time we were told you'll grow out of it. Probably in my mid late 20s, I came across a study that said I would be more likely to be affected by the syndrome um, in my younger years and in my elder years.
Interesting.
And this, and then now, and now we just understand. I mean, as a genetic mutation, I mean, you have it for life. It's there.
Right.
It's not going to go away. So, I think the latter years of possibly having issues are just going to be symptoms of um, of living a life with BWS, right?
Yeah.
So, right side of my body being larger than the left, the organs, the bones, arthritis. I mean, that's got to play a role at some
Definitely.
point. Um, which I know that in my knees, I'm already showing signs of arthritis. So um, I think the older years are just going to be um, the symptoms
Yeah.
just coming to light rather than new or more
Right.
problems, if that
It
makes
must be
sense.
frustrating because, like, I always
Um,
think of it from our family's perspective with Owen, and I always feel like, oh, there's not that much out there, there's not that much out there, but there is more out there for us than there is and for you, and there only is that because there's you and people in your age group that have it. And I feel like there's not many people older than you that have it that I've come across. Some, but I mean, the
right,
oldest person has to be what, in their 60s? Because I'm pretty sure they only discovered this like 60 years ago.
right, yeah. So we're right around the 60 mark. Uh, I'm not old enough to remember. My mom can tell you better, but at the study in St. Louis, there was one lady there who was at the time about my age now, give or take, um, and she had BWS. Um, the next oldest person was
Right.
me. Um, and like I said, I was 13, 14, somewhere
Right.
around there. So, but then the next oldest after me was an infant. So there was no buffer between the
Right.
gaps. So um, and they did a like a parent Q&A, and so my parents went to that, and while the parents were there with their infant that had this syndrome, I was off in the lobby running around with kids, playing and having a good time.
Yeah.
So um, that didn't really benefit me being able to be a part of the group and talk to
Yeah.
anybody. And and yeah, so now I get on and I start reading stuff, and it's almost overwhelming because there's so much
Right.
information. Um, but on the flip side, uh, there's there's a lot of information, but there's not a lot of information. There's a lot of information regarding to what I've already been
Right.
through, what I already know
Right.
firsthand. At this point, I want to know what's going to happen to me in the next
Right.
20 years. Um, so um, even um, um, the hospital in Philly. Um, that team, there was a team out of, I want to say maybe Portland or Seattle before Philly that I reached out to them, and they pretty much told me, sorry, we don't know what to tell you. Um, and then it was for a couple of other issues. I think lungs was an issue that mom was concerned with, but she was actually able to reach out to Dr. Beckwith. and ask him
Wow.
directly um, what his opinion on some things were. Um, and Mom, you'll have to chime in. I was probably late teens, maybe early 20s by the time she sent this. Maybe I don't know. It could have been younger, but at this time, I mean, even still, even if I was younger, uh, you got to figure if he was discovering this 60 years ago, by the time I was 15,
Right.
he was on the downslope of his career. So while he was very cordial and very um, um, elegant in his writing, um, he was able to speak to what he knew
Yeah.
in the syndrome, but he also was very good at letting her know that research was continuing, and so there was only so much that he could even
Right.
speak to. Um, so it still leaves me at the um, kind of the end of the road, the edge of the road, where I'm not really sure what's ahead,
Right. Yeah.
and it seems like nobody else does either. So we'll just have to
Yeah.
figure
It's
it
kind of
out.
crazy because I was, when I started all this, I'm like, oh, what the heck? Let me just see how long breast cancer's been around because I didn't know. And I Googled it and it went back to like the Egyptian times or something crazy. I'm like, oh my God. So, like, when you think about that, like everybody knows about breast cancer, but like it started so long ago. And I feel like is like one of those things that's starting now and that like people don't know much about it now, but in the years to come, I feel like it's going to be one of those things that it's like, wait a minute, hold on, this is happening, and it's like happening under the radar half the time because sometimes the
Right.
signs and symptoms are so subtle, and honestly, like people don't take you seriously half the time. Like how you said the pneumonia thing. Owen was emergently hospitalized in January for pneumonia, and I had been for months telling them he keeps getting sick. Like this doesn't make sense that he's getting it. Like it started in June, and he would get sick and then be like kind of okay, sick, kind of okay, and I'm like, this just doesn't make any sense. And then finally he was like in full blown respiratory distress and I had to take him. They're like, he has pneumonia. And I'm like, I told you he had pneumonia. So I think it's like one of those things that like half the time people shrug you off like you're nuts.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. As long as I can remember, um, having to tell people about BWS and um, the surgeries. Um, One of the things that my mom has always excelled at is being able to keep up with these
Yeah.
things, right? So keeping up with all of these surgeries and being for a while a single mom, and then um, she had my younger brother and sister, and so then you had two more kids that you had to keep up with, and um, so we'd go to doctor visits and talk to surgeons and whomever, and she would rattle off all of these things, and they would want to disagree with her or tell her, well, that's not necessarily the case, and she's like, well, listen, uh, it is because he has BWS, and they're like, well, typically, and she's like, look, I get that, and if we were talking about any one of my other kids, I would
Right.
believe you, you know, um, and it was always interesting because you had to tell them what BWS was and explain
Mm-hmm.
it, and then have them tell you, why you're wrong about a diagnosis or whatever it may
Right.
be. And you're like, but you didn't even know what BWS was, and now you want to correct me on, whatever the case may be. Like the pneumonia.
Yeah.
The treating doctor at that time had to call my primary, and uh, she told her, she's like, if his mom says he has pneumonia, he
Yeah.
has it. Just do the X-ray to confirm, give him the medicine, and send him home. Like this is something we do twice a year for the last
Yeah.
decade. We know, so just treat it and go on. Um, so yeah, it's just, but it is kind of inspiring and exciting, um, because there are doctors and nurses and PAs that are becoming
Yeah.
aware. And so now when you mention it, they're like, "Oh yeah, I did a paper on that," or "Oh yeah, I read about that," instead of,
What
"Wait,
is
what?
that?
Let me write that down and research it." Yeah, I've never even heard of that, and you're like,
Yeah.
that just does not inspire
No.
confidence. So
Especially when you're taking your
yeah, but
children
it's
to
it's
see
coming.
someone and they're like, what is that?" You're like, "Well, what the hell?" Like if I wanted Google to diagnose him or treat him, then I would just Google it. Like
Right, right. If I wanted to know that I was going to die in 6 days, like I just go to WebMD, because
yeah.
that's what the diagnosis
Yeah.
is. Uh, Sorry, you have a summer cold. You'll be dead in three
Right.
days. Uh, so yeah, but it is exciting. So we as of right now, we are planning on uh, going to the event in Philly.
Yeah.
Um, so it will be me and my sidekick.
That's
Uh,
awesome. I can't wait to meet her. She
she'll
sounds so fierce.
Yeah, yeah. Fierce is that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a good way to describe her, um, to say the least. But yeah, so we're looking at flights and put in request for days off. She's retired, so
Awesome.
uh, her schedule's open.
So
Yeah.
cool.
So as of right now, we're planning to go. So it'd be interesting um, to talk to some people who are researching it
Definitely.
firsthand, and see what kind of information is available. And I'm trying to sign up for their
I was going to
registry.
mention that.
Um, so what I don't know is how accessible my records are going to
Right.
be, since some of them, one, from so long ago, two, some of them are tied to a military
Right.
base, and then just UCLA in general back from the 80s. I don't know how easy that's going to be to obtain.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see. But uh, yeah, I would definitely like to get on that list and just see what comes of it, if
Yeah,
anything.
because you could be on that list and
So
they might be like, holy crap, there's all these other people on this list that are a little bit more like current in the BWS scheme of things that have so many of the same things that they didn't even
right,
put together as a BWS thing. Like I think the respiratory stuff right now isn't seen as a BWS problem, but so many BWS kids have it. So I think the more
right,
people join the registry and they're going to have to look at it and be like, oh, this kid has this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. I mean, they're going to eventually have to start adding things. And I think they would probably learn so much from your whole slew of stuff.
yeah. It's a long list to go through for
Yeah.
sure.
I'm so curious as to what
Yeah,
type you
it
have.
is.
I want to know so bad.
Yeah, yeah. So now it's kind of piqued my interest. Now I'm curious to
Yeah.
know how it falls in the grand scheme of things. So um, yeah, I'll have to do a little digging and see. I don't know. I have tried to reach out to whatever group it was that put on the St. Louis study, but it really hasn't
Panned out.
uh, panned out. Yeah, I can't really find information there, so I don't know if that information was automatically given to Children's Healthcare in Philly,
Hmm.
because I did read in there, on their website, how they obtained some of the information. Um, they didn't start from scratch, so they got information from somewhere, and I just don't know
Okay.
where. Um, so it'd be interesting to know.
Definitely.
So, so that's the plan. We're open to make it work. We've been looking up flights, and so
That's awesome.
which reminds me, I guess I need to get on and register us for the event. But yeah, we'll see how it goes and go from
Yeah,
there.
and there's also, if you guys wanted to do it, and anyone that's going to the conference, there's a poster session that you can do, and basically all you have to do is they send you the information, but they put the poster together, but then they kind of like have it during, I don't know, they put it up somewhere in the conference, and then people can go and read, pretty much read about you and like what your life was like, type of thing. So I know you can do that. I think you can still do that. I think there's still time for that. If you wanted to.
Yeah, yeah, I'll have to look. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, this is one of those things where it's just hard to keep up with everything now
Yeah.
because I'm so used to this not being available, and now you have an entire group researching it and
Yeah.
websites and support groups. So yeah,
You have a whole bunch of crazy
it's
moms
a
trying
lot,
to
but it's
find stuff
exciting.
out.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say crazy moms because I like living, but you as a mom, you can say that and get away with
Yeah,
it.
it's because
So
I like living.
yeah,
Well, I think a lot of BWS moms have
yeah,
to have a little bit of crazy in them because we're constantly being told that we're nuts. So,
yeah. I mean, it is a lot, and I commend them for doing it because I can remember time after
yeah.
time of mom just having to put her foot down, and just say, look, something's not right here, and you need to check.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, she's right.
Moms usually
Um,
are. My husband goes,
I
"Oh,
know,
stop."
and she reminds me. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, we pay for it now because now she's always
Yeah.
right.
She'll be like,
So,
"Remember that time?"
oh yeah, she'll remind us. But I mean, she's got a pretty good record, so you
True.
can't blame her.
True.
So, uh, yeah, so it's been exciting, and having this group I think has been good for both of us. For her being able to chime in to help with her experience.
Definitely.
Um, uh, I've said this before. I think in a post that I think BWS a lot of times is harder for the parents than it really is for the child. Um, I mean, you got to figure first several surgeries. I was too young to even
Right.
remember them, but she remembers every painstaking minute being at the hospital and having to sit on the hood of her car and just wait and wait and wait and wait. You know, um, even with everything that I've been through, I still don't know what that's like.
Right.
I can't imagine what
Yeah.
that's like. So uh, you have to commend the parents because in a lot of ways I do think it's harder for the parents than it is the
Yeah.
kids. So I think the support groups are necessary and they're helpful and I think they're vital to not just supporting the families and the moms and the kids, but and spreading awareness too.
Mhm. Well, I'm so thankful
So
that you were
so I
willing
commend you for
to do this because,
yeah.
a lot of people were, a lot of us are searching and searching for people that are older to just ask questions and learn from. And I think a lot of people learned a lot from your story.
I don't know how helpful it was, but I hope it at least helped somebody somehow. If nothing else, really just to to give some parents some peace of this is not a end all be all for your
Right.
kid. Um, this is not going to define them for their entire lives. Um, of course, I can't speak to um, being diagnosed with the tumors and having to go down that path. Unfortunately, I wish I could, so that I could help in that
Yeah.
regard. But outside of that, um, this isn't. It's not as bad as it seems right now. So with the surgeries and the tongue reductions and the scans and it, um, it is stressful. I get that, but it's not the end all be all.
Yeah.
Um, your kid's gonna grow up and be happy, and love life, and this is not going to be what defines them. So I think that's important to get out in front of the parents now.
Definitely.
So if I can at least help some parents or some, you know, even some teenage kids who are, struggling and thinking that, this is rough.
Hmm.
It's not as bad as it seems. Um, and you are going to live through it.
Yeah, and you're gonna come and you're gonna, be stronger
So
for it.
yeah, definitely. Uh, yeah, I mean, there were definitely some rough moments in there for sure. But looking back now, uh, in the same token, outside of my little brother being hospitalized for double pneumonia one time, my brother and sister never really had medical issues. Um, so if me having to go through all that meant that they didn't have to, then I do it all over
Oh,
again.
yeah.
Um, so uh, so yeah, there were some rough moments, but I lived through it, and I do think in some regards I'm stronger for it today.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful for it.
Awesome.
You know,
Well, we're really looking forward to hopefully meeting you in Philly and your fierce mother.
yeah,
That's gonna be
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. I may just send her
Just bring her
and let
along.
her. Yeah, I'll just send her. I'll stay in the hotel room and I'll just let her loose and
I'm sure she'll be all of
let
our
her
best
have at it.
friends.
She will. She doesn't meet any strangers, so she's one
That's
of a kind.
awesome. Well, thank you so much again, and I'm going to be sharing this everywhere because you helped me, especially being the mom of a young BWS baby. You helped me a lot, and I know you helped a lot of other people. So again, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope so. And I'm always open for conversation. So if you have any questions, anyone else, they're welcome to Facebook message me anytime. I'm not always on Facebook, but if it's a message through here, I'll definitely check it. Um, and I just wanted to say thank you to you. I know that trying to run a page successfully, spread awareness, get it out there, it's a lot. It requires a lot of attention and dedication. And so, being a mother, a wife, having a life, it's a lot. And so, I appreciate what you're doing for the kids, for the parents, the families, to all the dads out there that don't get a lot of recognition. Having the support group, I know it's a lot. So, thank you for your time, your
You're welcome.
dedication. It means a lot. It means a lot to the other families. I'm sure. So, thank
You're
you for that.
welcome. Anytime. Together, we'll figure it all out.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Absolutely.
Well, I hope.
So, well, I appreciate you
Yeah,
having
and I
me.
hope you have a good night. And again, if you need any other information about Philly, let me know. And as soon as the itinerary comes out, I'll send it to you guys.
Yeah, perfect. That'll work. And once we confirm everything, I'll let the group know, and hopefully
All
we'll see
right,
you guys
great.
there.
Thank you.
All right, perfect. Thank you
Yep.
so much.
Bye. So that was awesome. Took us a little bit of time to get him on here, but I'm so glad for um, everybody that was patient enough to wait for him and I to figure out how to get him on the screen, and it was so worth it. And I just am so appreciative of everybody that has watched, has given their story. I hope that people now feel a little bit more at ease with sharing their story. Um, and, I just feel even more strongly about just spreading awareness, especially just for Mike, stop. Especially just for him and people his age to find out what's going to happen for them in the future. So again, thank you all so much. I'm so happy with how this went, and I just hope it inspired people that are a little bit more hesitant to share their story to come on and do so. So if you want to, the form is still pinned at the top of the page. It'll generate to me, and I will get in touch with you. And you can truly see that hopefully this is all making a difference for people. So I hope you all enjoy the rest of your night. And again, thank you for tuning in with us.